"You are going to die tonight, Cassandra. You know that, do not you?" The words came from Beta Marcus, as he shoved her toward the iron cage where the other sacrifices waited. Cassandra stumbled but did not fall. She had learned long ago that showing weakness only made them push harder. The great hunt does not care that you are pathetic. The beasts in those woods will tear you apart just the same. He laughed, and the other warriors joined him, their voices echoing across the clearing where the Silver Moon Pack had gathered for the ritual that would decide who lived and who became bait for the ancient horrors that dwelled in the Forbidden Forest. Cassandra said nothing. She never did. Speaking only gave them more reasons to hurt her, more ammunition for their cruelty. Instead, she climbed into the cage beside 3 other Omegas, each of them trembling, each of them knowing exactly what awaited them when the moon reached its peak and the hunt began. The Forbidden Forest loomed at the edge of the clearing, a wall of twisted black trees that seemed to absorb the light, rather than reflect it. Cassandra had heard the stories since childhood. Creatures older than the packs themselves lived in those depths. Beasts that had existed before the first Alpha walked the earth. Predators that hunted not for food, but for sport, for rage, for reasons no wolf could understand. The great hunt was supposed to be a test of strength, a way for warriors to prove their worth by surviving the night and bringing back trophies from the kills they made. But everyone knew the truth. The weak were sent in first, driven deep into the forest to draw out the monsters, to distract them while the true hunters moved in for glory. Cassandra and the others in this cage were not hunters. They were bait. They were expendable. They were already dead. "Look at her," someone whispered from the crowd. "She does not even have a wolf. What is the point of sending her in? She will not last 5 minutes." The speaker was right. Cassandra was 23 years old and had never shifted, never felt the presence of her wolf, never experienced the connection that every other member of the pack took for granted. The healers had examined her when she was young, poked and prodded and tested her blood, and finally declared her defective. Broken. A wolf without a wolf. Her parents had died of shame within a year, unable to bear the humiliation of producing such a failure. Since then, Cassandra had existed on the edges of pack life, doing the work no one else wanted, sleeping in the servants' quarters, eating scraps, invisible except when someone needed a target for their frustration or boredom. The moon rose higher, full and bloated and red as blood. Alpha Raymond of the Silver Moon Pack stepped forward, his ceremonial armor gleaming in the firelight. He was old now, his muzzle gray, his eyes tired, but tradition demanded his presence. "Tonight we honor the old ways," he announced, his voice carrying across the assembled pack. "Tonight, we send our warriors into the Forbidden Forest to face the trials our ancestors faced, to prove that the blood of Silver Moon runs strong and fearless. And tonight, we welcome our guests from the royal court." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Cassandra lifted her head slightly, just enough to see through the bars of her cage. A group of wolves stood apart from the Silver Moon Pack, their presence radiating power so intense it made the air feel thick and heavy. They wore black leather and silver chains, the mark of the Blackwood dynasty, the royal family that ruled over all the packs in the northern kingdoms. And at their center stood a man who could only be the Alpha King himself. Theron Blackwood was larger than any wolf Cassandra had ever seen, his shoulders broad enough to block out the fire behind him, his presence so commanding that even Alpha Raymond seemed to shrink in comparison. He wore no armor, no ceremonial dress, just simple black clothing that somehow made him look more dangerous rather than less. His hair was dark as midnight, pulled back from a face that was all sharp angles and hard lines, and his eyes were the color of amber, glowing faintly in the darkness as they swept across the clearing. Cassandra felt those eyes pass over her cage and forced herself to look down, to make herself small and invisible the way she always did. Kings did not notice Omegas. Kings certainly did not notice defective Omegas. Locked in cages waiting to die. "Your Majesty honors us with your presence," Alpha Raymond said, bowing deeply. It has been many years since the royal hunt was conducted in our territory. Theron did not bow in return. Kings did not bow. I came because I heard rumors, he said, his voice deep and rough, the kind of voice that did not need to be raised to command attention. Rumors that Silvermoon has been sending the weak into the forest first, using them to flush out prey for the stronger. Hunters. I wanted to see if such cowardice was true. The clearing went silent. Alpha Raymond's face flushed red, but he could not deny it. Not with the cages sitting right there in plain view. Not with everyone knowing exactly what those cages meant. It is tradition, Your Majesty, he said finally. The hunt requires bait. It has always been so. Tradition, Theron repeated, the word dripping with contempt. You hide behind tradition to excuse your weakness. In my pack, every wolf plays through strength, not by sacrificing those weaker than themselves. He moved closer to the cages, his boots silent on the grass despite his size. Cassandra kept her head down, her heart pounding so hard she thought it might break through her ribs. She could feel his presence like heat against her skin, could smell pine and smoke, and something wild that made her stomach clench with a feeling she did not understand. Look at me, Theron said, and it took Cassandra a moment to realize he was speaking to her. She lifted her head slowly, unwillingly, and met those amber eyes. The world seemed to tilt. Everything around her faded into background noise. The crowd and the fire and the forest all disappearing until there was only him. Only those eyes locked on hers with an intensity that stole her breath. What is your name? His voice was softer now, but no less commanding. Cassandra, she whispered. Her voice came out broken, unused to being heard. Cassandra Graythorn, Your Majesty. Something flickered across his face, too fast for her to read. And you have volunteered for this hunt, Cassandra Graythorn? She almost laughed. Volunteered, as if she had any choice, as if her life had ever involved choices. No, Your Majesty, she said quietly. I was chosen. He turned to Alpha Raymond, and the temperature in the clearing seemed to drop 10 degrees. Chosen, Theron said. How convenient. And what crime did this wolf commit to deserve a death sentence? Raymond shifted. Uncomfortably. She is defective, Your Majesty. She has no wolf. She contributes nothing to the pack. The hunt is an honorable way for her to serve before she dies. If you are enjoying this story, do not forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel for more emotional stories like this one. The cage door opened with a shriek of metal. Cassandra flinched, expecting Beta Marcus to drag her out, to throw her toward the forest and tell her to run. But it was not Marcus who reached for her. It was the Alpha King. His hand closed around her wrist, gentle despite his strength, and he pulled her to her feet with a care that made her chest ache. You will not be entering the forest tonight, Theron said, his eyes still on Raymond. This wolf is under my protection now. The Alpha's mouth fell open. Your Majesty, you cannot simply take a member of my pack without negotiation, without offering compensation. Theron smiled, and it was not a kind expression. I am the king. I can do whatever. I wish. But if you insist on compensation, I will pay you 10 times her worth in gold. Though I suspect her worth is far greater than you realize. He released Cassandra's wrist and gestured to one of his guards. Take her to my camp. Keep her safe until I return. The guard, a massive beta with scars across his face, nodded and motioned for Cassandra to follow. She stood frozen, unable to process what had just happened, unable to understand why the Alpha King would waste his time and gold on someone like her. Move, Theron said, not unkindly. The hunt begins soon, and I would prefer you far from here when it does. Cassandra stumbled forward, following the guard through the crowd of stunned Silvermoon wolves. She could feel their eyes on her, could hear their whispers starting already. The defective Omega, stolen by the king. What could he possibly want with her? What use could she be to someone so powerful? She did not have answers. She barely had thoughts. All she knew was that, for the first time in her life, someone had chosen to save her instead of sacrifice her. The royal camp was set up a half-mile from the clearing, a collection of black tents arranged in a precise circle around a central fire. The guard led her to a smaller tent at the edge and gestured inside. "Stay here. Do not leave. Do not speak to anyone. The king will send for you when he returns." Then he was gone, leaving her alone in a space that was larger and more comfortable than anywhere she had slept in years. There was a bedroll, clean and thick, a basin of water, bread and dried meat laid out on a small table. Cassandra sat on the edge of the bedroll and waited, because waiting was what she did best. Hours passed. The moon climbed higher. She could hear sounds from the direction of the forest, howls and screams and roars that made her skin crawl. The hunt had begun. Somewhere out there, wolves were fighting and dying, proving their strength, or discovering they had none. And somewhere, out there, the Alpha King was among them, hunting creatures that would terrify lesser wolves. She must have dozed off, because the next thing she knew, someone was shaking her shoulder. Cassandra jerked awake, her heart racing, and found herself staring up at a woman in royal black. "Get up," the woman said coldly. "The king wants to see you." Cassandra scrambled to her feet, following the woman out of the tent and across the camp. Dawn was breaking, pale light filtering through the trees, and the warriors who had gone into the forest were returning, bloodied and exhausted, but alive. Most of them, anyway. Some would not be coming back. The woman led her to the largest tent and pushed her inside without ceremony. Theron stood with his back to her, washing blood from his hands in a basin. He had removed his shirt, and Cassandra could see the hard planes of muscle across his shoulders, the scars that marked a life spent fighting. "Leave us," he said without turning. The woman left. Immediately, closing the tent flap behind her. Cassandra stood frozen, unsure what to do, where to look, what was expected of her. Finally, Theron turned to face her, drying his hands on a cloth. "Did you sleep?" he asked. The question was so normal, so unexpected, that it took her a moment to answer. "Yes, Your Majesty. Thank you for your kindness." He studied her for a long moment, those amber eyes moving across her face like he was memorizing every detail. "Do you know why I stopped them from sending you into that forest?" She shook her head. She had wondered, had spent the entire night trying to understand, but nothing made sense. "Because the moment I saw you," Theron said slowly, "my wolf recognized something. A scent, a presence. Something I have been searching for my entire life without knowing I was searching." Cassandra's breath caught. She knew what he was implying, knew what those words meant in their world. "That is impossible," she whispered. "I am nobody. I am broken. Do not even have a wolf." He moved closer, close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from his skin. "Perhaps you do not have a wolf yet," he said quietly. "But I think you have something else. Something older. Something that has been sleeping, waiting for the right moment to wake." Before she could respond, before she could process the impossibility of what he was suggesting, a commotion erupted outside the tent. Shouting. Running footsteps. The tent flap flew open, and one of Theron's guards burst in, his face pale. "Your Majesty, you need to come, now. Something is coming out of the forest." They ran. Cassandra followed because she did not know what else to do, because the king's hand had closed around hers, and he was pulling her with him, because the entire camp was mobilizing, warriors grabbing weapons and forming defensive lines. She could see it now, emerging from the tree line. A creature so massive that it made the largest wolf look like a pup. Its fur was white as fresh snow, pristine despite the blood that stained its muzzle. Its eyes were gold, burning like molten metal in the morning light. The beast moved with a fluid grace that belied its size, each step deliberate, each movement controlled. And it was walking directly toward the camp, directly toward her. "Spears," someone shouted. "Form a wall. Do not let it reach the tents." Warriors rushed forward, raising their weapons, creating a barrier between the creature and the camp. But the beast did not. Slow. It did not deviate from its path. It simply kept walking, its eyes fixed on something beyond the line of spears, beyond the warriors, beyond everything except the spot where Cassandra stood beside the king. "Hold," Theron commanded, but his warriors were already moving, already preparing to throw their spears, already acting on instinct and training that said anything coming from that forest was a threat that needed to be eliminated. The first spear flew, then another, then a dozen more, all aimed at the creature's massive chest. The beast moved faster than anything that size should be able to move. It surged forward, covering the distance in seconds, and Cassandra felt Theron pull her behind him, shielding her with his body. But the creature did not attack. Instead, it positioned itself directly in front of Cassandra, placing its massive body between her and the warriors, between her and the spears that were still flying through the air. The weapons bounced off its thick hide, barely leaving marks, and the beast lowered its head, a rumbling growl emanating from its chest that made the ground vibrate beneath their feet. It was protecting her. This ancient, terrifying creature that should have torn her apart was protecting her. "Stop!" Theron roared, and his voice carried the weight of absolute authority, the kind of command that could not be ignored. "Lower your weapons, now." The warriors obeyed, though their confusion was obvious. They stood frozen, spears lowered, but still ready, eyes wide as they stared at the impossible scene before them. The beast that legends called the White Death, the creature that had killed more wolves than any other predator in the Forbidden Forest, was standing guard over a defective Omega like she was something precious, something worth defending with its life. What do you think will happen next? Leave your predictions in the comments below. Theron moved slowly, carefully, positioning himself where the beast could see him, without threatening it. "Easy," he said softly, the way one might speak to a frightened animal. "I mean her no harm. She is under my protection." The creature's golden eyes shifted to him, assessing, judging. For a moment, Cassandra thought it might attack anyway, might decide that even a king was a threat that needed to be eliminated. But then, it did something that made her heart stop. It lowered its massive head and pressed its muzzle against her hand, the gesture almost gentle, almost familiar. She felt warmth spread through her palm where they touched, felt something inside her chest crack open like an egg. Like a door that had been locked, her entire life was suddenly swinging wide. And then she heard it. A voice in her mind, ancient and powerful and utterly foreign. "Daughter of the moon," it said, and the words resonated through her bones. "The time of sleeping is over. Awaken." Cassandra gasped, her knees buckling. Theron caught her before she fell, his arms strong and steady around her waist. The beast stepped back, watching, waiting. And somewhere deep inside Cassandra, in a place she had never known existed, something stirred. Something that had been dormant, buried, hidden even from herself. Her wolf. Not the ordinary wolf that every pack member possessed. Something else. Something that made the White Death bow its head in recognition. Something that made the Alpha King hold her tighter, his own wolf responding to a call he had never heard before. "Cassandra," Theron said urgently. "Look at me. Stay with me." But she could not. The world was spinning, fracturing into pieces of light and shadow. She could feel her body changing, bones shifting in ways that should have been agonizing but felt like relief, like finally becoming what she was always meant to be, Her skin burned, her vision sharpened, and when she opened her mouth to scream, what came out was a howl that shook the trees and sent birds scattering from their branches for miles around. The transformation took her under, and the last thing she saw before the darkness claimed her was Theron's face, his eyes wide with wonder and something that looked almost like fear. When Cassandra woke, she was in a different tent, lying on soft furs with a cool cloth pressed to her forehead. Her body ached in ways she had never experienced, every muscle sore, every bone feeling like it had been broken and healed. She tried to sit up and found she could not, her strength completely spent. "Do not move," a woman's voice said. Cassandra turned her head to see an elderly healer sitting beside her, mixing something in a wooden bowl. "You have been unconscious for 2 days. Your body needs time to adjust." 2 days. The hunt, the beast, the transformation that she only half remembered. "What happened to me?" Cassandra whispered. The healer set down her bowl and studied Cassandra with eyes that had seen too much to be easily surprised. "You shifted," she said simply. "For the first time in your life, you finally shifted, and not into an ordinary wolf child, into something I have not seen in 50 years, a silver wolf, a creature of legend, born once every few generations, blessed by the moon goddess herself." Cassandra shook her head weakly. "That is impossible. I am nobody. I am broken." The healer said I would never have a wolf. The old woman smiled sadly. "The healers were wrong. You did not lack a wolf. Your wolf was simply too powerful to emerge without the right catalyst. And it appears you found that catalyst." Before Cassandra could ask what she meant, the tent flap opened and Theron entered, ducking his head to fit through the entrance. He looked tired, dark circles under his eyes, his hair disheveled like he had been running his hands through it repeatedly. But when he saw Cassandra awake, relief washed across his face so clearly that it made her chest tighten. "Leave us," he told the healer, and the woman departed without argument. Theron sat on the edge of the furs, close enough that Cassandra could feel the heat of his body. "How do you feel?" he asked. "Confused," she admitted. "Scared. I do not understand what is happening to me." He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away if she wanted, and took her hand in his. His palm was rough with calluses, warm and steady. "The beast in the forest," he said quietly. "The White Death. Do you know what it is?" Cassandra shook her head. "It is a guardian," Theron explained. "Ancient protector bound to certain bloodlines, certain powers. They appear when their charge is in danger, when the one they are sworn to protect needs them most. For it to recognize you, to defend you, means you carry a bloodline we thought extinct. The bloodline of the moon blessed, the original children of the goddess who walked the earth before the packs divided into kingdoms." The words washed over her. Too big to comprehend, too impossible to accept. "But my parents were nobody," she protested. "Common wolves from a common pack. They died in shame because I was defective." Theron's jaw tightened. "Either your parents lied about who you really are, or someone lied to them. But I intend to find out the truth." He paused, his thumb stroking across her knuckles in a gesture that was probably unconscious but made her skin tingle. "There is something else you need to know. When you shifted, when your wolf emerged, I felt it. My wolf recognized yours, not as pack, not as subject to king, as mate." The word hung between them like a physical thing. Mate. The bond that transcended all others, the connection that could not be denied or broken, the joining of two souls that the moon goddess herself ordained. Cassandra stared at him, searching for signs that he was mocking her, that this was some cruel joke. But his face was serious, his eyes holding hers with an intensity that made it hard to breathe. "That is why you saved me," she said slowly. "Because you knew." He shook his head. "I suspected. The pull I felt when I first saw you, the way my wolf reacted, those were signs. But I did not know for certain until you shifted, until I felt our souls recognize each other. A terrible thought occurred to her. You are engaged to Lady Seraphina Ashford, she said. The alliance between your pack and hers has been arranged for years. Everyone knows you are meant to marry her. Theron's expression hardened. An alliance arranged by my father before he died. A political convenience to unite two powerful packs. But I am king now, and I will not be bound by arrangements that ignore the most sacred bond our kind can experience. Seraphina is not my mate. You are. He said it with such certainty, such absolute conviction, that Cassandra almost believed him. Almost. But she had spent too many years learning that good things did not happen to her, that hope was a luxury she could not afford. She will never accept this, Cassandra said. She is an alpha, powerful and connected. I am an omega who was raised as a servant, who was locked in a cage and sent to die. Even if the bond is real, even if the goddess herself chose us, your court will never allow it. Your allies will see it as weakness. Your enemies will use it against you. Theron leaned closer, his free hand coming up to cup her face with a gentleness that made her want to cry. Let them try, he said softly. I did not become king by caring what others think. I became king by being strong enough to take what is mine and hold it against anyone foolish enough to challenge me. And you, Cassandra Greythorn, are mine, my mate, my equal, my queen. The last word shocked through her. Queen. It was absurd. It was impossible. She opened her mouth to argue, to list all the reasons this could never work. But he stopped her with a finger against her lips. Rest now, he commanded. And even though it was an order, his tone was gentle. When you are stronger, when you can stand on your own, then we will face whatever comes together. But for now, let me protect you the way you have been protecting yourself your whole life. Let me carry this burden so you do not have to. He stood, releasing her hand with what seemed like reluctance, and moved toward the tent entrance. At the flap, he paused and looked back. The White Death is still here, he said. It has been lying outside this tent since you shifted, refusing to leave, refusing to let anyone approach who is not pack. Your guardian is waiting for you to wake so it can teach you what you need to know. Then he was gone, and Cassandra was left alone, with thoughts that spiraled in 100 directions. A silver wolf, a guardian, a mate bond with the most powerful alpha in the kingdoms. None of it made sense. All of it felt like a dream she would wake from at any moment to find herself back in the servants' quarters, back in her cage, back in the reality where she was nothing and no one. But when she lifted her hand, she could still feel the warmth where Theron had touched her. And when she closed her eyes, she could sense something vast and patient waiting just outside the tent, something that recognized her on a level deeper than blood or bone. The next 3 days passed in a haze of learning and transformation. The healer, whose name was Elder Mira, helped Cassandra learn to control her shift, to call her wolf forward without losing herself in the process. It was harder than it looked, required a balance of will and surrender. That felt impossible at first. But with each attempt, it became easier. Her wolf was strong, larger than any Omega wolf had the right to be, with fur that shimmered silver in the moonlight and eyes that glowed with an inner light. When she ran, she felt power coursing through her limbs, felt the joy of movement after a lifetime of being slow and weak and human. The White Death, which Elder Mira told her to call by its true name, Lunaris, watched her practice with what seemed like approval. The beast was a guardian, yes, but also a teacher, showing her through images and sensations how to use abilities she did not know she possessed, how to sense danger before it arrived, how to heal minor wounds with focused thought, how to communicate mind to mind with others who shared her bloodline, skills that belonged to the moon. Blessed, the ancient line that had ruled before the kingdoms fractured. Your ancestors were the first alphas, Elder Mira explained during one of their sessions. They were chosen by the goddess to lead and protect all wolves, to maintain balance between the packs. But they were too powerful, too perfect. Other alphas grew jealous, feared losing their own authority, so they conspired together and hunted the moon blessed to near extinction. Cassandra listened to the history with growing horror. If they were so powerful, how could they be killed? Elder Mira's expression grew grim. By betrayal, by poison that weakened their connection to the goddess, by attacking when they were at their most vulnerable, during childbirth and mating bonds. The last known moon blessed died 200 years ago, her daughter taken and hidden away to protect her from the same fate. That daughter's bloodline was thought to have been diluted, bred out through generations of mixing with common wolves. But bloodlines like yours do not dilute. They sleep, they wait, and when the need is great enough, they awaken. If you want to see how this story ends, make sure you are subscribed with notifications on. Cassandra thought about her parents, about their shame and their deaths. Had they known? Had they hidden the truth to protect her? Or had they truly been ignorant of what ran through her veins? She would never know now. They were gone, and with them, any answers they might have carried. On the fourth day, Theron summoned her to the main tent. She went reluctantly, still uncertain of her place, still feeling like an imposter in fine clothes borrowed from the royal supplies. When she entered, she found him standing with several advisors, all of whom turned to stare at her with expressions ranging from curiosity to barely concealed hostility. "Gentlemen," Theron said coldly, "this is Cassandra Greythorn, my mate and your future queen. You will address her with the respect her position demands." An older man with gray in his beard stepped forward, his face troubled. "Your Majesty, with respect, you cannot simply declare an Omega from an obscure pack as your queen without consulting the council, without considering the political ramifications, without honoring your existing engagement to Lady Seraphina." Theron's eyes flashed gold, his wolf rising close to the surface. "I am the king," he said, his voice dropping to a dangerous growl. "I do not ask permission from the council. I do not honor engagements made without my consent. And I do not explain myself to advisors who forget their place." The man blanched and stepped back. But another advisor, younger and brasher, did not retreat. "The Lady Ashford is already on her way here," he said. "She received word of what happened during the hunt and is bringing half her pack's warriors with her. She will not accept this insult quietly, Your Majesty. You risk war over an Omega who cannot possibly be worth such a price." Theron moved so fast that Cassandra barely saw him cross the space. One moment he was standing beside his chair, the next he had the young advisor by the throat, lifted. Off the ground, choking. "Say that again," Theron whispered, his voice lethal. "Tell me again that my mate is not worth fighting for. I would very much like to hear you repeat those words." The advisor gasped, clawing at Theron's hand, his face turning purple. Cassandra felt something inside her lurch, a protective instinct she had never experienced before. "Theron," she said quietly, "put him down." For a moment, she thought he would not listen. The rage in his eyes was absolute, the kind of fury that ended with blood and death. But then he seemed to hear her, seemed to register her voice cutting through the red haze. He released the advisor, who fell to the ground gasping and coughing. "Get out," Theron said to all of them. "All of you. Now." They fled, stumbling over each other in their haste to escape. When they were alone, Theron turned to Cassandra, and she saw him fighting for control, saw his wolf pushing against his skin, demanding to be released. "I am sorry," he said, roughly. "I should not have lost my temper. But when he spoke of you that way, when he suggested you were not worthy, I wanted to rip his throat out." She moved closer, driven by instinct rather than thought, and placed her hand against his chest. She could feel his heart pounding beneath her palm, feel the heat of his skin through the thin fabric of his shirt. "I understand," she said softly, "but killing your advisors will not help our situation." He covered her hand with his, pressing it harder against his chest. "Our situation," he repeated. "You said our situation. Does that mean you are beginning to accept this? Accept us?" Cassandra looked up at him, at this powerful, dangerous man who had saved her life and claimed her as his mate, who was willing to risk everything for a bond he did not choose but would not deny. "I do not know," she admitted. "Everything is happening so fast. A week ago, I was nobody, preparing to die in a forest. Now you are telling me I am your mate, that I am descended from gods, that I am supposed to be a queen. It is too much. It feels like a story that is happening to someone else." Theron's other hand came up to cup her face, tilting her head back so she had no choice but to meet his eyes. "It is happening to you," he said firmly. "And I know it is overwhelming. I know you are scared. But I also know what I feel when I look at you, when I touch you. This bond between us is real, Cassandra. As real as your wolf. As real as the power that is waking inside you. And if you need time to accept it, I will give you that time. But do not ask me to walk away. Do not ask me to pretend I do not feel what I feel. What do you feel?" The question came out barely above a whisper. His thumb traced along her jaw, the touch sending shivers down her spine. "Like I have been searching my whole life for something I could not name, and I finally found it. Like my wolf has been restless and incomplete. And you? Make it calm. Like I could face anything, survive anything, as long as you are beside me." He paused, his gaze dropping to her lips. "And like if I do not kiss you soon, I might lose my mind." Cassandra's breath caught. No one had ever looked at her the way he was looking at her now. Like she was precious. Like she was desired. Like she was everything. "Then kiss me," she said, surprised by her own boldness. He did not need to be told twice. His mouth claimed hers with a hunger that stole her. Breath, his lips firm and demanding as his arms wrapped around her waist, pulling her flush against his body. Cassandra gasped at the contact, at the heat that flooded through her, at the rightness of being in his arms. Her hands fisted in his shirt, holding on like he was the only solid thing in a world that had gone liquid and unstable. The kiss deepened, his tongue sliding against hers, exploring, claiming. She felt his wolf reaching for hers, felt the bond between them strengthen and solidify, becoming something that could not be broken or denied. When he finally pulled back, they were both breathing hard, both trembling with the force of what had just passed between them. "Mine," Theron said, the word coming out rough and possessive. "Say it. Say you are mine." Cassandra knew she should resist, should protect herself from the inevitable hurt that would come when reality crashed back down. But she could not fight this. Could not fight him. Could not fight the truth singing. Through every cell of her body. "Yours," she whispered. "I am yours." The moment shattered when a horn blew outside, long and loud, signaling the arrival of important guests. Theron cursed under his breath and released her, though his hand found hers and held tight. "That will be Serafina," he said grimly. "She has arrived sooner than I expected." He looked at Cassandra, his expression serious. "Stay close to me. Do not let her provoke you. She will try to make you feel small, try to convince you that you do not belong. But remember who you are. Remember what you are." Cassandra nodded, though fear coiled in her stomach. Lady Serafina Ashford was everything Cassandra was not. Powerful, beautiful, born to rule. How could she possibly stand against such a woman? They walked out together, hands still joined, and found the camp in organized chaos. A column of warriors in silver and blue had arrived, at least 100 strong, all of them armed and ready for war, and at their head rode a woman who could only be Seraphina. She was tall and elegant, her dark hair perfectly braided, her armor fitted to emphasize curves that would make any wolf take notice. She sat her horse like a queen, radiating confidence and authority. When she saw Theron, she smiled, but the expression did not reach her eyes. "My king," she said, dismounting with fluid grace. "I came as soon as I heard about the hunt. I was worried about you." Her gaze slid to Cassandra, and the smile turned sharp. "And I see you have acquired a pet." Cassandra felt the insult like a slap, felt herself wanting to shrink back, to hide behind Theron like the worthless Omega everyone believed her to be. But then, she felt Lunaris stir in her mind, felt her wolf rising up to meet the challenge. She straightened her spine and met Seraphina's eyes without flinching. "Lady Ashford," she said politely. "Welcome to the King's camp." Seraphina's expression flickered with surprise before settling back into cold amusement. "It speaks," she said. "How charming. Tell me, little Omega, what exactly are you doing holding the King's hand? Have you been assigned to some new servant's position?" Theron's grip on Cassandra's hand tightened, a warning to Seraphina that she was treading dangerous ground. "Cassandra is not a servant," he said, his voice carrying across the camp. "She is my mate, recognized by the moon goddess herself. She will be my queen, and you will address her as such." The silence that followed was absolute. Seraphina stood frozen, her perfect composure cracking just enough to show the fury underneath. "Your mate," she repeated slowly. "You claim this pathetic creature as your mate when you are promised to me? When our packs have been planning this alliance for years? An alliance I never agreed to," Theron said coldly. "A promise made by a dead king that has no bearing on my choices. The mate bond is sacred, Seraphina. You know this. No political arrangement can supersede it." Seraphina laughed, but the sound was brittle, dangerous. "The mate bond requires 2 willing participants, Theron. Do you truly believe this Omega wants you? Or is she simply too terrified to refuse a king's claim?" She turned her attention back to Cassandra, her eyes glittering with malice. "Tell me, girl, did you throw yourself at him? Did you use some trick, some potion, some manipulation to make him think you are something more than what you clearly are?" Cassandra felt rage building inside her, hot and fierce. Not for herself, but for what Seraphina was implying about Theron, about his ability to choose, about the sacred bond they shared. "I did nothing," she said, her voice stronger now, carrying a power she did not know she possessed. "The bond chose us. Neither of us asked for it. But I will not stand here and let you disrespect it, or him, simply because you are angry about losing what was never truly yours." The words hung in the air like a challenge. Seraphina's face went white with fury. "You dare speak to me that way? You, who are nothing, who are less than nothing." "Enough," Theron commanded, and his voice carried the weight of his alpha power, the kind of dominance that could force submission from anyone not strong enough to resist. "You forget yourself, Seraphina. You forget who you are addressing. I am the king, and I have made my choice. If you cannot accept that with dignity, then you should leave my camp before I lose my patience." Seraphina stared at him for a long moment, calculation flickering behind her eyes. Then she smiled again, that same cold, sharp smile. "Of course, Your Majesty. I would not dream of challenging your authority. But perhaps you would honor me by allowing your supposed mate to prove herself worthy of such a claim." Theron tensed. "What are you proposing?" Seraphina gestured to the gathered wolves, both her own warriors and Theron's court. "A challenge. A simple test of strength and will. If this Omega truly carries the power, you claim, if she truly is moon-blessed, then she should have no difficulty facing me in the circle of truth. We fight until one of us submits. If she wins, I will accept your mating and withdraw my claim. If I win, she returns to whatever gutter you found her in, and we proceed with the alliance as planned. The crowd murmured, excitement rippling through them. Cassandra felt panic clawing at her throat. She had only just learned to shift, only just begun to understand her powers. Fighting an experienced alpha in front of everyone was madness. She would lose. She would humiliate herself and Theron. But before she could speak, before she could refuse, she felt Lunaris pulse in her mind. The Guardian sent images, sensations, a flood of knowledge that was not quite words. Trust yourself. Trust your power. Trust what you are. I accept, Cassandra heard herself say. Theron turned to her, his expression a mixture of pride and concern. You do not have to do this, he said quietly, ears alone. I will not force you to prove yourself to anyone. She met his eyes and saw the truth there. He would protect her. He would fight for her. He would face his entire kingdom if necessary. But this was not his fight. This was hers. I know, she said softly. But I need to do this. Not for them. For me. I have spent my whole life being told I am worthless, being shown I do not matter. I need to prove to myself that those voices were wrong. He searched her face for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Then I will be there when you win, he said with absolute certainty. The circle of truth was drawn in the center of the camp, a large ring marked with salt and ash, the traditional space for ritual combat. Cassandra stood on one side, her heart pounding, her wolf pacing restlessly inside her. Seraphina stood opposite, already shifted into her wolf form, a massive creature with silver-blue fur and eyes like ice. She was beautiful and terrifying, every inch the perfect alpha, the kind of opponent Cassandra would have run from a week ago without a second thought. Elder Mira appeared at Cassandra's side, pressing a cup of bitter liquid into her hands. Drink this, she whispered. It will help your shift come faster, help you access your power more fully. But be warned, child. This is not a sparring match. Seraphina will try to kill you if she can. You must be willing to do the same, or you will not survive. Cassandra drank the liquid, feeling it burn down her throat, feeling it ignite something in her blood. I understand, she said. She stepped into the circle, and immediately felt the weight of ancient magic settle over her. This space was sacred, protected by laws older than any kingdom. What happened here would be binding. Winner take all. Seraphina circled, her lips pulled back to show razor-sharp teeth. Cassandra closed her eyes and reached for her wolf, expecting the struggle she had experienced every time before. But this time was different. This time. Her wolf surged forward eagerly, hungrily, like it had been waiting for this moment. The transformation took her in a rush of power and pain, bones reshaping, muscles reforming, until she stood on 4 legs instead of 2. She was smaller than Seraphina, lighter, less experienced. But when she opened her eyes, she saw shock ripple through the crowd. Her fur was pure silver, glowing faintly in the torchlight. Her eyes burned gold, the same color as Lunaris, the same color as the ancient. Guardians. And around her neck, barely visible, was a mark that had not been there before. The crescent moon of the goddess, branded into her fur, proof of her bloodline. Seraphina attacked without warning, a blur of teeth and claws. Cassandra dodged on instinct, felt knowledge flowing into her from Lunaris, from her ancestors, from the very blood in her veins. She was faster than she should be, stronger than her size suggested. When Seraphina lunged again, Cassandra met her in mid-air, and they crashed together with enough force to shake the ground. They fought with savage intensity, rolling through the circle, tearing at each other with teeth and claws. Cassandra felt pain explode along her side, where Seraphina's claws raked deep, felt blood matting her fur. But she also felt power building inside her, felt something ancient and terrible waking up. She pushed Seraphina back and howled, the sound echoing across the camp, across the forest, carrying a power that made wolves drop to their knees involuntarily. Seraphina stumbled, her eyes wide with something that looked like fear, because that howl had not been the call of an Omega, or even an Alpha. It had been the call of something higher, something that commanded obedience from all wolves, the call of the moon, blessed. Cassandra struck while Seraphina was off balance, going for the throat the way Lunaris had shown her. But at the last second, she pulled back, her teeth closing on Seraphina's scruff instead, forcing her. Down, but not killing. "Submit," she growled, the word coming out distorted through her wolf's jaws but understandable. Seraphina struggled, pride warring with survival instinct. Cassandra bit down harder, feeling skin break, tasting blood. "Submit," she repeated, "or I will end this permanently." For a long, tense moment, Cassandra thought Seraphina would choose death over surrender. But finally, the other wolf went limp, exposing her throat in the ultimate sign of submission. Cassandra released her and stepped back, her sides heaving, her body screaming with exhaustion and pain. Around them, the crowd erupted, some cheering, some shouting in disbelief. She had won. Against all odds, against an experienced alpha, she had won. She shifted back to human form, the change easier now, natural. Blood ran down her side where Seraphina's claws had torn deep, but she ignored it, keeping her head high as she walked to where Theron stood at the edge of the circle. He looked at her with such fierce pride, such raw desire, that it made her knees weak. "My queen," he said, loud enough for everyone to hear. Then he pulled her into his arms, crushing her against his chest, his lips finding hers in a kiss that claimed her before their entire court. When he finally released her, Cassandra turned to face Seraphina, who had shifted back and stood glaring at them both with naked hatred. "You won," Seraphina said, her voice tight with barely controlled rage. "I acknowledge your victory, and withdraw my claim to the king's hand. But know this, Omega. You may have beaten me today, but you have made an enemy who will not forget, who will not forgive. Enjoy your crown while you can." She turned and strode from the circle, her warriors falling in behind her. The threat hung in the air even after she left, a promise of future conflict. But Cassandra could not bring herself to care about future threats. She had survived. She had proven herself. For the first time in her life, she had stood and fought and won. Theron's arm wrapped around her waist, supporting her as her adrenaline faded and the pain of her wounds made themselves known. "Elder Mira," he called, and the old healer hurried forward with her supplies. "Tend to her injuries. Make sure she has everything she needs." As Mira worked to clean and bandage the deep cuts along Cassandra's ribs, Theron never left her side. His hand stayed on her shoulder, his presence a constant comfort. "You were magnificent," he said, quietly. "Terrifying and beautiful and perfect. Every wolf here just witnessed the awakening of power they thought was legend. They will follow you now, not because I command it, but because you have earned their respect." Cassandra looked out at the assembled crowd and saw truth in his words. The wolves who had sneered at her, who had called her defective and worthless, were looking at her with new eyes, with awe, with fear, with the recognition that she was something they had never encountered before. "What happens now?" she asked. Theron smiled, the expression fierce and possessive. "Now we return to the capital. Now I present you to the full court, to the Council of Alphas, to everyone who needs to understand that you are my mate and their queen. Now we begin the work of securing our throne and protecting our bond from those who would destroy it." He paused, his thumb brushing along her jaw, in that way that made her heart stutter. And tonight, if you are willing, we complete the mate bond. We seal what the goddess has joined, and we become truly one. Heat flooded through Cassandra at the implication in his words, at the promise of what completing the bond would mean. Intimacy, connection, a joining that would bind their souls forever. I am willing, she said, meeting his eyes without hesitation. I am yours, Theron. Completely. The journey to the capital took 3 days, and every moment of it felt surreal to Cassandra. She rode beside Theron at the head of the column, no longer invisible, no longer insignificant. Wolves bowed as she passed. Courtiers sought her attention. Even the hardened warriors who had fought in the hunt treated her with wary respect. At night, when they made camp, Theron kept her close, introducing her to the key members of his court, helping her navigate the complex web of alliances and rivalries that defined pack politics. It was overwhelming, but she learned quickly, her sharp mind picking up on subtleties and undercurrents that would have escaped her notice before her awakening. Lunaris traveled with them, a silent shadow at the edge of camp, close enough to protect, but far enough to give them space. The beast's presence both comforted and unnerved the other wolves, a constant reminder that Cassandra was not what she appeared, that she carried power beyond their understanding. On the third night, Elder Mira pulled Cassandra aside as the camp settled in for sleep. Tomorrow you will reach the capital, the old owl woman said. Tomorrow you will face challenges that will make Seraphina look like a minor inconvenience. The Council of Alphas will test you, question you, try to find weaknesses they can exploit. You must be strong, child. You must show them no fear. Cassandra nodded, though anxiety twisted in her gut. What if I fail? What if I am not strong enough for this? Mira's wrinkled hand covered hers, surprisingly warm and steady. You faced your death with courage when you were nothing but a powerless Omega, she said firmly. You awakened a bloodline thought extinct. You defeated an Alpha in ritual combat with barely a week of training. You are stronger than you know, braver than you believe. Trust yourself the way your mate trusts you. The words stayed with Cassandra as she returned to the tent she shared with Theron, as she found him waiting for her, his eyes dark with desire and something deeper. Come here, he said softly, and she went to him without hesitation, letting him pull her into his arms, letting him kiss her with a hunger that had been building for days. His hands moved over her body, learning her curves, mapping her skin, and she responded with equal fervor, her own hands exploring the hard planes of his chest, the strength in his arms. I want you, he breathed against her mouth. I have wanted you since the moment I saw you in that cage. But I will not rush this. I will not claim you until you are absolutely certain. If this story touched your heart, share it with someone who loves epic romance. Tell me in the comments, did you see this ending coming? Cassandra pulled back just enough to meet his eyes. I am certain, she said. I have never been more certain of anything in my life. Make me yours, Theron, in every way that matters. He needed no further invitation. His mouth claimed hers again as his hands worked at the laces of her dress, as fabric fell away and skin met skin. They came together with desperate need, with the inevitability of destiny, with a connection that transcended physical pleasure and became something sacred. When he finally moved inside her, when their bodies joined as completely as their souls, Cassandra felt the mate bond lock into place with a snap that echoed through her entire being. She gasped at the intensity of it, at the flood of sensation and emotion that poured from him into her and back again. She could feel his love, his desire, his absolute commitment, and he could feel hers. Afterward, they lay tangled together, hearts pounding in sync, breath mingling. Theron traced patterns on her bare shoulder, his touch reverent. Mine, he murmured. Forever mine. Cassandra smiled against his chest. "Forever yours," she agreed. And for the first time in her life, she felt complete. The next morning, they reached the capital. The city sprawled across a valley, massive and ancient, built of stone and iron and centuries of history. At its center rose the palace, a fortress that had housed Alpha. King since the first pack unified the territories. Wolves lined the streets to watch their king return, to catch a glimpse of the mysterious mate he had claimed. Cassandra held her head high as they rode through the gates, ignoring the whispers, the stares, the obvious skepticism. The throne room was vast, with columns rising to a ceiling painted with scenes of legendary battles. The Council of Alphas waited there, 12 powerful wolves who advised the king and held influence over their respective territories. Theron led Cassandra to the center of the room, his hand firm in hers. "Members of the council," he announced, his voice carrying to every corner. "I present to you Cassandra Greythorn, my mate and your queen." The council members exchanged glances. An older alpha with gray hair and cunning eyes stepped forward. "Your Majesty, we have heard troubling reports that this female is an omega from an insignificant pack, that she has no political value, that her claim to your throne is based solely on an unverified mate bond." Theron's jaw tightened, but before he could speak, Cassandra squeezed his hand. She stepped forward, addressing the council directly. "I am indeed from an insignificant pack," she said clearly. "I was raised as a servant, treated as defective, locked in a cage and sent to die. But I am also descended from the Moon Blessed, the original children of the goddess. My wolf is silver, marked by the crescent moon, protected by the guardian Lunaris who has not walked among our kind for 200 years. I defeated Lady Seraphina Ashford in ritual combat before witnesses, and I carry the mate bond with your king, a connection ordained by the goddess herself and sealed through the sacred joining." She paused, letting her words sink in, letting her power radiate outward. "You may question my political value. You may doubt my worthiness, but you cannot deny what I am, or what I represent. The Moon Blessed have returned, and with them, a power that predates your councils and your territories. I am your queen by right of blood, by right of bond, and by right of strength. If any among you wish to challenge that claim, step forward now and face me as Seraphina did." Silence filled the throne room. Not a single alpha moved. The gray-haired councilman stared at her for a long moment, then slowly, deliberately, he went to one knee. "My queen," he said. "Silvermoon Pack acknowledges your claim." One by one, the other council members knelt, their submission rippling through the room until every wolf present had bowed before her. Cassandra felt tears prick her eyes, but refused to let them fall. She had done it. She had faced the highest authority in the land and emerged victorious. Theron moved to stand beside her, his hand finding hers again. Together, they stood before the throne, two halves of a whole, Alpha King and Moon Blessed Queen, united against whatever challenges the future might bring. "Rise," Theron commanded, and the Zai Council obeyed. "We have much work ahead of us. The return of the moon. Blessed will send ripples through every pack in every kingdom. There will be those who see this as an opportunity, and those who see it as a threat. We must be prepared for both." Over the following weeks, Cassandra settled into her new life. She attended council meetings, learning the intricate politics of pack governance. She trained with Lunaris, developing her abilities, discovering new powers that even Elder Mira had not anticipated. She worked with Theron to strengthen alliances and identify potential threats. And slowly, carefully, she began to investigate her own past, searching for answers about her parents, about the bloodline that had stayed hidden for so long. What she discovered was both heartbreaking and illuminating. Her parents had not been common wolves. They had been protectors, guardians sworn to hide and raise the last child of the moon blessed, until she was strong enough to reclaim her heritage. They had died not of shame, but of poison, murdered by enemies who had discovered their secret and tried to eliminate the threat before it could fully awaken. Cassandra grieved for them, for the sacrifice they had made, for the love they had shown by protecting her even unto death. But she also honored them by becoming everything they had hoped she would be: strong, brave, worthy of the power that flowed through her veins. Months passed. The initial resistance to her queenship faded as she proved herself again and again, making wise decisions, showing compassion to the weak while maintaining strength against threats. Even those who had doubted her most strongly could not deny that she was exactly what the kingdom needed: a queen who understood suffering, who had known powerlessness, who would fight to protect those who could not protect themselves. On the anniversary of the hunt that had changed everything, Theron commissioned a new ceremony: the blessing of the moon, a celebration of the mate bond, of the return of the ancient bloodline, of the love that had transformed 2 lives and reshaped a kingdom. Wolves from every pack traveled to the capital to witness it, to pay homage to their queen, to celebrate a new era. As Cassandra stood beside Theron in the palace courtyard, wearing a gown of silver silk that seemed to glow in the moonlight, she looked out at the assembled crowd and marveled at how far she had come, from cage to crown, from Omega to Queen, from broken to blessed. "What are you thinking?" Theron whispered, his arm around her waist. She leaned into him, breathing in his scent, feeling the mate bond hum with contentment. "I am thinking that a year ago I believed I would die alone and worthless in a dark forest," she said quietly. "And now, I am standing here, surrounded by wolves who call me queen, bonded to a man I love beyond measure, wielding powers I never dreamed I could possess. I am thinking that sometimes the darkest moments lead to the brightest transformations." He pressed a kiss to her temple. "You transformed yourself, Cassandra. I simply recognized what was already there." She turned to face him, rising on her toes to kiss him properly, not caring who was watching, not caring about protocol or propriety, because she had learned something crucial over these past months. Life was too precious, too fragile, too full of unexpected turns to waste time worrying about what others thought. "I love you," she said against his mouth. "My king, my mate, my everything." His arms tightened around her. "And I love you, my queen, my silver wolf, my miracle." Above them the full moon shone bright and clear, and somewhere in the distance, Lunaris howled in celebration. The hunt that had been meant to end her life had instead given her everything she never knew she wanted. And as Cassandra stood in the arms of the man who had saved her, who had claimed her, who had loved her when she could not love herself, she knew with absolute certainty that this was only the beginning. The Moonblessed had returned, and their story was far from over.